Before we talk about the X-Men: The Last Stand, let's have a little backstory about what happened before the production began. You see, director Bryan Singer decided that he didn't want to do X-Men 3. He preferred to do Superman Returns. And look how well that turned out. Just saying. Anyway, so Bryan Singer leaves. There is no director for X-Men Last Stand. Then comes Brett Ratner, director of the Rush Hour films. Pretty sure most people were skeptic before production even began when they heard the news that Brett Ratner will be directing X-Men 3. I mean, could you imagine it? The thought of recasting Storm with Chris Tucker? I'm just going to let that image sink into your minds. Okay. Horrible thought has been placed into your minds. Thank you. But anyway, fortunately that didn't happen. But what did happen was not that much better. You see, I like the idea that they managed to continue the story of the war between man and human and how it finally escalates to a war. But they just could have done so much more. I mean, here's one example I would like to see in this movie. One thing I would love to have seen, I would have loved to have seen the Sentinels. And you do see one, though it's not real. You don't really see it. And the only thing you really see of it is its head. Well, that's all nice and dandy, but I kind of want to see more. I mean, you could have done that. I mean, that would have been one way for the humans to be fighting the mutants. No. We're gonna have the Sentinels. Everybody had the little cure. They had the cure, the whatever it's called in the movie. I don't know if it has a name or not, but they had that and all their guns. They could shoot darts, and now the mutants don't have any powers. Actually, come to think of it, why do they? How do they manufacture the cure so fast in that film? And I don't remember if they actually mentioned it or not, but I don't know. I'm beginning to wonder if they didn't mention it at all. So it's just like apparently we've already manufactured it into a weapon to shoot at mutants. But as I said, I would have really loved to see the Sentinels. I mean, that goes to a completely different story, but would have been interesting, would have been neat to see. Now, the problem, I don't have a problem with the cast of X-Men 3. I do, however, have a problem with the character development of X-Men 3. Let's take Cyclops, for example. Now, we all know where this is going. We all know some don't really care for Cyclops. Well, for those of you who don't know, haven't seen the film, prepare to be spoiled, Cyclops dies. Now, you're probably thinking to yourself, it's probably tragic to see Cyclops die. He was in the first one, he was in the second one, and, he's a very important character, and he probably has a very noble death. No, not really. No, he finds Jean, and then she blows him up. And when they find out he's dead, it's not even that big of a shock. It's basically like, Cyclops is dead. I mean, I think it happens in maybe the first half hour of the movie. So yeah, Cyclops has become expendable. In fact, the only reason why Cyclops was in this movie was so he could die. Come to think of it, I think Cyclops they've turned Cyclops into Morph. That character from the animated series. Yeah. Cyclops' purpose was to die. He's become Morph. It's not really something to be proud of. But anyway, as you can tell, I really wasn't impressed with, the development of Cyclops. If they actually took the time to, build him up differently, it would have been fine, even if they did want to kill him. But, no, this wasn't the best way of doing it. Speaking of which, let's talk about Jean Grey, who in this movie has become the Phoenix. Now, we all know if you're a comic book fan, if you know the comics and you've grown up with the story of X-Men, you should know what the Phoenix is. It is Jean at her most powerful form. It's like, I don't know, it's kind of hard to, it's not difficult to explain, it's just a little weird because I'm not sure which one is canon. Basically, the Phoenix is the psionic force that resides in Jean, and it comes out here and there and makes her all-powerful, but sometimes it turns into something far worse, which is the Dark Phoenix, which is basically what the Phoenix is in this movie. Actually, it's more like, it's the Dark Phoenix is just another personality that Jean developed a long time ago So yeah, of course, like I think the actual story is supposed to be, I don't know if it's supposed to be like a psionic being that was in the McCran crystal, or if it's just a psionic being that was a part of Jean all at the time. But I suppose the understanding of this movie is just she's just an Omega class mutant, and it's just the Phoenix is just a form of her being an Omega class mutant. Either way, I'm not sure which one they wanted to go with, but my big issue with Jean in this is that she's really not that developed. She's just there to be crazy, and that's about it. And that's all fine and dandy, but there's not a lot of build up to it. I mean, yeah, it was built up in the second one. You could see that the Phoenix was beginning to show itself, but what was the idea behind turning her into the Dark Phoenix? I mean, I know it's supposed to be like a suppressed personality that has somehow popped up over the time that she was in the lake, but still, it's just like it's not a really developed thing. She's just like, oh, I'm crazy. I look crazy. I'm gonna blow things up. Now look at me as I look crazy. I barely say anything in this movie. Well, I kind of think of it. She really doesn't say that much. It's just, she does have some lines, but still, it's just not like anything that does anything just to prove the fact that she's crazy. That's about it. Anyway, so as you can tell, I think they could have made the Phoenix work if they once again did something different. Now we go to Charles Xavier. Good old Chuck. Yeah, I'm gonna spoil it once again. He too dies in this movie. Now you think, oh, it's probably something very, dramatic. He's Professor X, and he's the one who formed the X-Men, so he should probably have a tragic and dramatic death. Well, he does, but it's only halfway through the movie. Yeah. I think the idea they wanted to do is that, they wanted to have the X-Men. What would the X-Men do if they didn't have Xavier with them? What would they do? Well, that would have worked if they haven't done it 2 times already. In the first movie, he gets knocked out by the poison thing in Cerebro. The second movie, he's captured and mind controlled throughout the entire movie. This movie, he's in half of it, and then he dies. And he just dies. And the issue I have with this is that you can have him. I could live with him being killed if they did it differently. Like if he would died at the end of the movie trying to fight the Phoenix, I could have lived with that. But no, do it halfway through, once again continuing the idea of the X-Men doing stuff without Xavier, making Xavier feel irrelevant. The other issue I have with this is that bugs me is that how this affects Magneto, because you would think when when Magneto would see his best friend blow up into dust, you would think he wouldn't, just continue with his plans. And in fact, that would have been better development for him because it would have been a different direction for him. Seeing his Xavier die, he just kind of realized that maybe this idea that he's had wouldn't work, and he'd come up with something else. But instead, what we get is that after he sees Xavier die, thanks to the Phoenix, he takes the Phoenix and tries to control it, when he obviously could tell it wasn't going to work. So as you can imagine, the development of this movie just really, really bugs me. I mean, this movie is action-packed, but it just feels like it's not as strong as X-Men 2 was. And that's the big issue behind it. Because when you have a movie like X-Men 2, and then you have a movie like X-Men Last Stand, it's disappointing no matter which way you look at it. However, there is one positive in all of this with X-Men The Last Stand. Beast. Beast being played as Kelsey Grammer. That was a great casting decision. But, as I've said, the casting was great. It's just the character development just didn't do anything. There was nothing different, and for most of them, and they didn't do a great job with the development. It just seemed really, really weird. And I can go on and on about this, but I think that time has passed. Now we get the next film in the franchise, X-Men Origins Wolverine.